Jungkook BTS ordered to attend public trial. Is the government turning his trauma into a national spectacle? Why would a nation demand a grieving artist to relive his trauma under the spotlight of a televised courtroom? No less. What exactly is the South Korean government trying to prove by summoning Jungkook, global superstar and youngest member of BTS, to a public hearing over the Seing incident that nearly cost him his peace, his safety, and maybe even his sanity? Why now? Why him? Why would a country so proud of its global icons decide to parade one of its brightest stars before a courtroom of flashing cameras and political spectators? The shockwaves from the Seing Scandal that shattered the private life of Jungkook earlier this year continue to grow, and now they've reached the legislative floors of the Korean government itself. In a move that has left millions speechless and armies around the world on edge, the Seoul metropolitan government has declared its intent to transform the deeply personal, horrifying ordeal into a national teaching moment. One that demands an open courtroom. One that insists Jungkook must testify in public. And whether he's emotionally ready or not, the order stands. The world is watching, and the question on everyone's lips: will Jungkook be okay? It started in silence, unnoticed, unseen, until it became uncontainable. A Seing fan, armed with forged government identification, managed to bypass layers of security and reach the doorstep of Jungkook's personal residence. The incident, which occurred in June 2025, was initially downplayed by local authorities and even whispered away by some media outlets. But the truth refused to remain buried. When leaked footage surfaced, grainy security camera stills of a shadowy figure slipping through what should have been an impenetrable building, public rage exploded. But no one expected what came next. This was no longer a scandal. This was a security failure of national proportions. The South Korean government, known for its deeply protective stance toward national image and public safety, found itself cornered by the backlash. How could a multi-million-dollar security system be bypassed by a lone individual? How could the country's most precious cultural ambassador, a man known across the globe, be so easily endangered? The silence broke. Official statements came rolling in like waves. Seoul's mayor issued a rare emergency briefing, declaring the Seing intrusion an unacceptable failure of systemic safeguards. But apologies were not enough. The damage was done. Jungkook, once an idol shielded by the highest layers of privacy and protocol, was now thrust into the very center of political debate. What happened behind closed doors at HYB after that is still mostly unknown, but sources confirm that Jungkook spent the days following the break-in under psychological care. He reportedly experienced intense sleep disruption, paranoia, and even emotional breakdowns. But even amid his personal struggle, one decision altered everything. He filed an official report. Jungkook, the golden magne of BTS, chose to speak up, and in doing so, he unleashed something even he couldn't have predicted. Once the criminal charges were formally initiated, the court documents revealed something chilling. The Seing had gained access using counterfeit clearance originally issued by a government-linked contractor. This wasn't just obsession. This was organized, calculated, dangerous, and the government knew it. That's when the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism stepped in, followed by the National Assembly, followed by the President's office. Suddenly, what started as a private matter had become the epicenter of a public investigation. The message was clear: this cannot happen again. The stakes rose higher. A special legislative task force was formed, and their recommendation? A public hearing that would dissect the Jungkook case, frame it as a model, and broadcast it to the nation as a cautionary tale. With cameras, with media, with Jungkook himself in attendance. And here lies the emotional breaking point. He didn't want this. Multiple reports from close HYB sources have indicated that Jungkook has expressed severe emotional distress at the idea of being forced to relive the ordeal in a courtroom setting, especially one so highly televised. But the subpoena has been issued. The legal machinery has moved. Unless a last-minute intervention is made, Jungkook will have to sit, speak, and remember. In front of the entire country, he will not be alone. Jeon, BTS's oldest member, has already stepped forward. The two were recently seen together leaving a closed-door meeting with HYB's legal team. Jin's presence is said to be both symbolic and strategic, a show of brotherhood and a line of emotional defense. Fans who caught sight of them reported seeing Jungkook with reddened eyes and a distant gaze. Jin held his shoulder, gently guiding him past the crowd, shielding him from cameras the way an older brother would. But how much shielding can really be done now? This is no longer just about one man's trauma. The government wants to build an entire legal framework around this moment. They are proposing the Artist Protection Act, which aims to criminalize the trafficking of celebrity data, increase penalties for stalking, and impose strict controls on security personnel managing high-profile clients. And they want Jungkook's case as its foundation, as if he is not a person but a precedent, not a victim but a symbol, and perhaps the cruelest irony, they ask him to relive his pain so that others may never have to. HYB's legal team has submitted a formal appeal to allow Jungkook to give his testimony in a sealed session. Whether this appeal will be granted remains uncertain. Political analysts argue that making an exception could weaken the law's public impact. But at what cost? Behind the spotlight, armies have mobilized. #ProtectJungkook trended #1 worldwide within hours of the announcement. Fans are flooding the presidential office with petitions, demanding a more humane approach. Over 5 million signatures have already been collected globally. Emotional letters, digital artwork, videos, and even protest banners have filled the online landscape with one unified message. He is not your cautionary tale. He is a human being. The trial will be open. Cameras will roll.
Politicians will speak.
And Jungkook, if the government has its way, will take the stand for now. He remains mostly silent. Not a single statement has been issued from his personal account. No live broadcasts. No messages. Only one subtle signal, an Instagram story posted briefly and then deleted. A single black screen with white text that read, "I'm trying. Trying to be brave, trying to breathe, trying to survive." Nobody truly knows what that story meant. But it shook the fandom to the core. What comes next is a test, not just of legal reform, but of humanity itself. Will South Korea choose to protect its artists before they are broken? Or only afterward, once their pain has been politicized? Will Jungkook emerge from this process stronger or shattered? And more hauntingly, is this the price of being a national treasure? As the day of the public hearing approaches, all eyes turn once again to the boy who debuted at 15 and became a man before the world's eyes. A man who gave everything to music, to fans, to a country that now asks for one more thing: his pain on display as evidence. The question still lingers, louder than ever. How much more must Jungkook give before someone says, "That's enough, he was never trained for this"? Jungkook, who once stood under blinding stage lights singing of dreams, love, and loss, is now expected to sit under courtroom spotlights, recounting his fear to a room full of strangers wearing suits. He can belt a high note through a thunderstorm of applause, but how does one steady their voice when speaking about being hunted? How does a person prepare to become evidence in their own trauma? For years, Jungkook's name has been synonymous with strength, charisma, and passion. The youngest member of BTS, the Golden Magne, he was the boy who never cracked, never stumbled in public. But now, under pressure from a government that insists his experience is too important to stay private, we are seeing the cracks that fame has long hidden. And this time, no encore will heal them. A new statement was released by a member of Seoul's City Council, and its phrasing has sparked outrage. In it, the official referred to Jungkook's incident as a strategic opportunity for cultural legislation and an ideal case study in the reform of celebrity protection. The words sent a chill through social media platforms. Opportunity? Case study? Armies weren't having it. This how South Korea's brightest cultural icon is being viewed? As a case? As an example? As a teaching tool? A person who cried in the dark, who couldn't sleep alone for days, whose voice reportedly shook when asked to recount the moment the Seing stood outside his door, is now being reduced to legislation leverage. And no amount of governmental justification can erase that bitter truth from the hearts of those who truly see Jungkook not as an asset, but as a person. An unnamed insider from HYB, speaking under condition of anonymity, described the internal atmosphere as heavy, volatile, and heart-wrenching. According to them, staff members have been working double shifts, not just on legal documents, but on emotional damage control. It's not just about protecting him legally anymore. It's about protecting what's left of his emotional bandwidth, they said. He's exhausted, but he doesn't want to disappoint anyone. Is that what's keeping him going? The fear of letting others down. In the midst of this media cyclone, Jeon has become more than a fellow member. He's become Jungkook's anchor, a pillar, a protector. Insiders say Jeon postponed several post-military solo schedules to be present during every legal meeting. One particularly emotional moment happened last week, when Jungkook reportedly broke down after a rehearsal for the trial testimony. He had attempted to read aloud the written statement prepared by his legal team, but mid-sentence, his voice cracked, and he fell silent. That's when Jeon reached over, took the papers from his hand, and read the rest for him. The room, reportedly, went quiet. Even legal officials lowered their heads. No one dared speak, because for that one moment, this wasn't about a courtroom. It wasn't about legislation. It was about a boy and his brother, and the weight of being the symbol of a country that demands more than it gives. And still, Jungkook tries. He attends every prep session. He consults with trauma specialists. He listens. He nods. He agrees to sit in that chair. But those closest to him say that with every step forward, a little piece of him seems to fall behind. His eyes no longer sparkle in the same way. His laughter, once loud and unfiltered, is now barely audible, if at all. HYB's legal team, backed by public petitions and civic pressure, submitted a revised plea to hold at least part of the hearing in private. But that plea was officially denied yesterday. The reason? National interest outweighs individual preference. The words hit like ice, sparking yet another online firestorm. So celebrities aren't even individuals anymore? One user wrote, another posted, "He gave you his youth, his voice, his soul. Now you ask for his tears too?" And perhaps the darkest comment of them all, what happens to a country that eats its own angels? June 30th draws closer, like a looming storm cloud. The courthouse has already begun preparing a press zone. Major broadcasting networks are requesting full live coverage access. Commentators are being lined up. Panels are being assembled. Legal analysts, celebrity psychologists, even media ethics experts, all set to descend like vultures on a day that should have never needed to happen. Behind the scenes, Jungkook remains at the HYB compound. His personal schedule has been cleared entirely.
No interviews. No performances.
No content, just preparation. And Survival Point One source said he often stands by the studio door at night, staring out the window in silence. That sometimes he plays Still With You on loop, not for rehearsal, but to calm his nerves. That he hums softly to himself when no one is around, as if trying to remember who he was before all this. And yet, no matter how much the industry or the system tries to frame this as policy progress, the reality cannot be ignored. Jungkook is a human being, and he's hurting. So what happens next? Will the nation tune in for justice or for spectacle? Will the court respect his pain or turn it into viral content? And if Jungkook cries in front of that courtroom, will they call it bravery or will they call it ratings? As Seoul gears up for this historic legal event, we are reminded again of how fragile our idols really are, how easily their humanity is traded for agenda, and how deafening it is when the ones who made us feel seen are left invisible in their own suffering. Jungkook's final decision to comply with the hearing order came only hours before the legal deadline. It's unclear whether he did it out of obligation, exhaustion, or silent surrender. But the confirmation was released this morning. Jungkook will appear at the open trial on June 30th. And now, the world waits, not for entertainment, but for the hope that somehow, through this cruel twist of justice, a new kind of protection can rise. One that remembers that fame is not immunity, that behind the music, behind the lights, behind the numbers, there is a boy who once stood on stage and said, "Please wait for me. I'll come back stronger." Let us pray that promise was not a goodbye in disguise.